All right, good Wednesday evening, everyone. I'm Scotty Powell here for the Carolinas weather discussion. It is Wednesday, May the 7th, 2014 at 8 p.m. I want to welcome everyone to our weekly broadcast where a bunch of weather geeks and meteorologists and forecasters like ourselves get together and discuss different topics of weather that affects the Carolinas region and Virginia. So kind of a light crowd tonight. We got Matt and Joey with us, and we'll go around and let everyone introduce themselves and talk kind of about the weather that they've had so far this week. So I will start with Matt tonight. Matt, I know UNC Charlotte just finishing up classes, so I don't in the Charlotte area or not. Where you at?
Um, well, like you said, Charlotte's wrapping up classes. Most people are starting to head home if they haven't already. They're leaving tomorrow or Friday. I'm leaving tomorrow personally. I know Ricky's leaving in the morning. He's busy packing tonight. That's why he can't be here. I'm kind of stuck in the whole packing and moving process. I don't have too many boxes to put stuff in, but that's why my pirate flag is no longer on the wall behind me. But I mean, weather's been pretty nice here. It's been mostly sunny, upper 80s. I think tomorrow we'll get near 90. It's been pretty nice around here recently. Can't complain. I mean, nobody likes exams, but I mean, for studying, you couldn't get any better. So it's been pretty nice. I'll toss it over to Joey, let him talk a little bit about what he does over there in Catawba County.
Thank you, Matt. Weather-wise, this week, I guess it was hot here. I was in Chicago for the weekend. It was actually dreary and rainy and like 55, I think, on Friday. And then on Saturday, it was 72 and slightly steamy during the morning because I was in the indoor pool. And I had no idea what it was like outside because I didn't bother to even open the door. So, but then in the afternoon, actually, the pool even got closed, believe it or not. It was kind of weird. It was really cold. I don't know. Inside, it was like they had an indoor pool and it was 60 degrees. I don't get it. It didn't make sense to me either. It was, the water was decent, but the air temperature in the room was a little chilly. Yes, but it didn't bother my kid a bit. He stayed in there the whole time. So, like I said, weather-wise, I had a lot to talk about. So that's pretty much that. I'll let Scotty kind of take over on that one.
Yeah, just like what you're talking about, Joey. It's been kind of quiet when some math right quick. I want to give you a little stat here or something. Hold on one second. Good deal. We've had weather pattern here in Morganton and Burke County. We call it a heat wave here in Burke County, as we've had 3 consecutive days of 90 degrees or hotter. So the official weather reporting station here in Burke County reported 92 degrees Monday, 91 degrees yesterday, and 90 degrees today. So there you go, a mini so if that's any sign of what summer's going to be like, then I think it's going to be a hot one. So besides that, no even clouds or anything in the sky, just sunny, warm days. And I mean, I for one enjoy it because I'm a big hot weather fan. So speaking of hot weather and heat waves and stuff like that, that kind of throws our topic out there tonight, is we're going to talk about how to prepare for the heat and what you need to do to keep yourself, your family, and pets and friends and all that safe during the warm weather months of May, June, July, and August, and how to prevent yourself from causing some life-harming or even, I guess, at the extreme life-ending heat-related symptoms. So Matt is our residential EMT guy who has a very diverse background in emergency management and how to take care of things and stuff like that. So I'm going to kind of just open it to you because I don't really know what to talk about on this topic with protecting yourself from heat and heat exhaustion and heat strokes and stuff like that. So I'm going to throw it to you, buddy.
Yeah, I'm kind of in the same boat. What is there to talk about? It's a very, I guess, simple subject, but something that a lot of people don't actually pay attention to, which is surprising. I mean, you'd think that you'd know how to stay cool, stay hydrated, so on and so forth, but Some people just don't understand, or they're in conditions where it's very difficult to do so. I guess I'll just start out with kind of what heat stress, heat stroke is. It's heat stress, by definition, is when your body can't regulate its body temperature, and the body temperature reaches 41 degrees Celsius, which is about 105, 106 degrees Fahrenheit. And at that point, the body's overloaded, the brain's overloaded, it starts to shut down, and it's almost irreversible from the interior, like yourself. Your body just can't deal with it anymore. You have to get external cooling, ice packs, medical treatment almost immediately. Otherwise, it can be lethal. I'm just like, yeah, I don't know what else to really talk about. I guess I'll just let y'all ask some questions or something, I guess. I'm not sure kind of what the format would be to lead into, but
We'll say this. This was Joey's idea to do this topic, so
yeah, we'll blame it on Joey for this one. I mean, I love expressing my medical knowledge, but on a topic such as heat stress, that's a very small topic.
Put it on me when this wasn't my idea. Was this Steve's idea actually? I don't remember.
Well, let's go back and look.
But anyway,
Ben, and you see where he's at tonight. He's not here.
And then he put out
He
on
bailed
it.
out.
Yeah, that's what he did. He stuck us with this topic and then he left. I think I could probably come up with a couple of things. Matt, why don't you first explain? Okay, you kind of explain what happens when your body temperature gets so warm. Let's explain. I mean, I know there's probably not an exact threshold, but at what point would the outside temperature or the heat index, whichever one, I'll let you explain which one actually affects the body more. But at what point does this start to become an issue? At what temperature, like if it's 89 degrees outside, I mean, do we have any problems? Or is it something that only happens once you get over 100 degrees? At what point do we really have to start worrying about heat stroke in humans?
There's actually there's a lot of different factors that go into that, and I'm going to share my screen here. I actually have a chart that displays this. This will work for me because it not only deals with the actual air temperature itself, it deals a lot with the let's see. There's Joey. Can you see this?
Yes.
Or is this still Joey?
No, we can see it.
Okay. It not only deals with the actual air temperature, but it also deals with the relative humidity, and that's basically how much. It's kind of a comparison between the dew point and the air temperature, and then you get your relative humidity based off of that. I really like this chart because it shows you that you can have temperatures here in the 90s. However, it's on the lower end, this yellow area. It's on the lower end of the, I guess, threat scale or threat meter, I guess you could say. As long as the relative humidity is fairly low. See there, it's at 40% relative humidity, but at about 90 degrees, you can have a little bit of fatigue possible with prolonged exposure and or physical activity. That's not just walking to or from your car and work or your house or whatever. That's actually being outside, working, just like doing construction, lawn care, etc. However, once you start getting into those higher temperatures, about 98, I guess you could say, with 40% relative humidity, that's when you start to worry about sunstroke or heat stroke. Muscle cramps, heat exhaustion is likely. And as the relative humidity increases, as you get up into the 80s, 90s, that's when the temperature could possibly be a lot lower. However, the heat index, that's the numbers that are inside this chart. The heat index is what's going to rise, and that's what's going to really affect your body more. There's not necessarily a threshold temperature as to what your body can handle in terms of heat index. However, once you start getting above 100, 105, that's when you really start to worry. And that's where this line right here, dividing the, I guess, mustard yellow and orange color. Anything orange and up is potentially dangerous, and that's when you start to limit your physical activity outside. You have football teams outside, you have baseball teams outside. That's when you start to really watch how much they're drinking, watch how much they're working. You take regular breaks, all that fun stuff. Once you're in this red zone, there's just no reason to really be outside other than walking to and from your car. You'd have to be absolutely ridiculous to be working outside in heat indexes in the 130s. To me, that's just insane. I'm going to say no if you ask me to do it. But that's when you get in this extreme danger: heat stroke, sunstroke, highly likely. That your body just can't handle that anymore. When you have those dew points at such high temperatures, or this relative humidity at such high percentages, your body can't release its heat the way it normally does. What it does is, when you sweat, it's called evaporative cooling. The sun will heat up that sweat, and it will pull away the hottest molecules of water or sweat from your body, therefore leaving the cooler molecules still on your body. And that's how evaporative cooling works. That's why when you're sweaty and you go inside and it's cool, all that moisture on your body starts to cool down a lot quicker than your body does, and all of a sudden you start shivering. Even though it may be 80, 90 degrees, you'll shiver because you feel cool. But when the relative humidity is this high, when there's so much moisture in the atmosphere that your sweat can't evaporate off and go into the atmosphere, then your body can't release its heat the way it needs to. And when that happens, your internal body temperature starts to rise, and you have no way of bringing that back down other than possibly just diving into an ice bath, I guess. And so that's when it starts to get really dangerous. You start to worry about your heat stroke. That's when you need to really watch your internal body temperature. Athletic trainers, coaches, parents, you just need to pay attention to your child. Watch for symptoms of fatigue. What else? Nausea. Just generally just doesn't look very good. Very red in the face. And then if it gets even worse, you can start to see actually a lack of sweat because your body starts to realize, oh, that's not working. We need to retain our moisture as much as we can. And so then that's when you start checking their temperature. If they start to get pretty hot, you need to get them inside almost immediately, get them cooled down. And if it gets to the absolute extreme, then you start to seek emergency medical attention. But yeah, I really like that chart. It's a very informative chart.
I did notice by that chart, it looks like, the danger zone begins, the 104, 105 range, which goes right along with what the National Weather Service does when they issue advisories. They begin to issue advisories right around that same threshold. So that makes complete sense. Another question, you kind of went over a little bit of this there, but let's just focus just on this part of it. You're outside, your kids are playing in the yard, they're playing a baseball game or football, whatever you're working out in the yard, for whatever reason. You look over at your kid, you look over at your neighbor. What signs would make do I need to look for to know that this person is probably in some sort of danger, other than the fact that maybe they're laid out on the ground, obviously. But I mean, before that happens, what would be some of the signs that know that these people might be, starting to experience heat stroke?
I guess it's going to be a little bit easier. I guess a little bit easier to kind of explain, more like with your kids playing football or baseball or some kind of sport outside, rather than the working man over in the yard, because they'll be a little bit more resilient to show it. With kids, they're very easy to show what they're feeling, anatomically and physically and physiologically. They can crash very easily, but they will give you plenty of signs to let you know what's happening. If your kid's out on the field playing some sort of sport and they're starting to become really fatigued, they'll start to bend over, they'll put their hands on their knees, they'll put their hands on their hips, they'll start breathing a little heavier, they'll move a little bit more lethargically. You can tell that they're getting tired, and it may present itself in a way that they're more tired than what they actually should be based on the amount of work that they've been doing. Like, say it's only been 30 minutes into practice, you have that heat index of 105, 110. 30 minutes into practice, they're really starting to drag their feet. They're complaining to their coach. They're bent over. That's when you need to start worrying about them. You need to start saying, "Hey, coach, let me look at my son right quick." Or the coach needs to make a decision if their parents aren't there and say, "Hey, are you feeling okay?" So on and so forth. Nausea is a big thing. That's normally not presented from a distance. You have to actually hear that from them. Or they could actually start to dry heave, which is a very nasty thing that most of us know about. Not a pleasant topic.
Back in my playing days, I think the rule was you had to actually physically throw up about 3 times before you got any kind of medical attention. So maybe that's different now.
Yeah, it varies from coach to coach, and I know most coaches have started to adapt into the form and accepted the sciences of exercise science and physical training, where they understand the signs and symptom of dehydration and heat exhaustion, and they won't push you as hard. I mean, they'll push you as hard as they can, as much as they feel like is necessary within the game. And I know football. I played football. They will push you to your limit, but they understand what those limits are, and especially person to person, they understand what those limits are. If you have someone that's 300 pounds, you're not going to expect them to do the same things that someone 150 pounds can do. However,
could you write that down for some of my old coaches? I don't think they 300 pounds. You got to do twice as much work, son. That's how they looked at it. But
it depends on which way you're going with that. If you're going for just simply, like, I know you can't do as much running, but you should be able to block more people. That's just kind of how it goes. But coaches typically know their players, and they'll be able to tell when a player's not doing something that he should be doing, or he's not feeling the way he should, or something's just off. And that's a good thing, especially if you have coaches in the school programs that watch these boys grow up, or watch these girls grow up in their sport. And I guess if you're going back to your original question of like what signs you can look for, the same kind of things can be presented in the average working man or woman out in construction or lawn care. They'll be bent over a little bit more often. They may come, if they're working for someone that's in a residential area, they may come and ask for water a little bit more frequently, or the job may be done a little bit slower than you'd like it to. And I'm not sure legally how that works, but as a homeowner, if you're there and you have someone working for you, just keep an eye out on these people, because, I mean, they are on your property and you have paid them to come do the work. The very least thing, the least thing you could do is to just check up on them, make sure they're hydrated, make sure they're feeling okay, because you don't want to have somebody collapse on you. It's not a pleasant sight. It's not a fun sight, and I mean, they could be completely fine. They just tripped over something, tripped over a rock. But then again, they also could have collapsed from heat exhaustion or heat stroke. And at that point, you're just like, okay, I don't know what to do. Let's call 911. Whole big thing. It's just it's kind of being kind to that other human being, whoever they may be, if they're working for you or whatever. You know you want that job done, but take care of them first.
And that sort of leads me to my next question. Let's say that you've got the guys are there to mow your yard. It's a hot day. You can tell they're starting to struggle. One of them maybe comes up to you, up to your door, asks for water, says he's not feeling well, and obviously he's showing a lot of the signs that you just mentioned of heat stroke, heat exhaustion, dehydration, things like that. He's showing those signs. He's asked you for water. At what point do you call 911? At what point, what do you need to do for that person, and then at what point is it time that you can no longer help them and you need to get paramedics involved?
There's no real definite point. However, I think a good general consensus would be they come to your door, they're feeling exhausted earlier than they normally should be. They usually feel great at this time. They're dehydrated. They're asking for water. They feel really hot to the touch. Like if you were to feel their arm or their forehead, they'd feel really warm. Um, you could bring them inside, let them cool down for a few minutes, or put them in some shade, let them rest for a little bit. Um, I'd say after about 30 minutes of cooling off for a little bit, if they haven't regained themselves to that point where they were before, if they're not, if their body temperature isn't back to near normal, or if they just still don't feel very well and still feel very warm to the touch, then I would start to be concerned. I think that their body temperature would have been higher than what was previously thought at the initial, hey, I'm thirsty or whatever. Um, that's when I would probably call 911, or obviously if someone collapses in your yard, I would call 911 because that's a pretty good indicator if someone's having heat stroke, heat exhaustion, and whatnot. Um, but it's more of a time issue, I guess. If you brought them in, you've cooled them down, you've given them something to drink, maybe a little something to eat. They could just be tired from not having eaten in the morning. If they haven't regained uh, their status to where they were beforehand, then I would start to worry. Um, it's all a judgment call, really. Um, they could be fine in 15 minutes, they could be fine in 30 minutes, they could be fine in an hour, but after 30 minutes you think, okay, maybe it's not good. Then you call the ambulance. Ambulance is there in 5-10 minutes, and then 15 minutes later they're fine again. I mean, you didn't do anything wrong to them. You call the ambulance on them, they're not going to charge you unless you have them transported. The ambulance can stay there and wait them out a little bit if they want to. That's up to them. It's a lot of a judgment call. Case by case, I'd say just give it time. Give them water. Give them a little bit of food. Let them rest in a cool spot. And just see how their condition is. If it improves, you're good. Let them get back to where they were and get back to work. If it doesn't improve, judgment call. See if it's improved at all, like even just the slightest bit, or if it's worsened, then I would definitely call them.
Yeah, and I'm sure obviously if they lose consciousness or something like that, it's definitely time to start making that call. Okay, well, let's say we're at that point. We've got somebody who has collapsed. They've lost consciousness. They are not. They're no longer responsive. You obviously can't give them water. You can't help them with anything like that. I've dialed 911. The paramedics are on the way. First off, what? I'm sure 911 is going to tell me what to do. You probably already know the answer to this, so why don't you go ahead and let the people know what can I do while I'm waiting on the paramedics, and then just go ahead and segue into what do the paramedics do once they get there? What are they going to do to help treat this person, say before they're the actual transport?
Okay, so person's collapsed. Let's say they're working on your yard, and they're out in the middle of your yard, and they've got one or two other guys with them, and you've called 911. So you call 911, they're probably going to give you instructions, probably very similar to, is anybody there with you? Try and get him indoors if you can. Let's say you bring him inside. You and a couple other guys carry him inside, get him into a cool area. You check for a pulse. Make sure his heart's still beating. That's just standard procedure. If someone collapses, you always make sure they still have a pulse. Because if they collapse, there's a good chance that they have had a cardiac arrest. They could have just passed out, but there's also that chance that they've gone into cardiac arrest. So you always want to check for that pulse using the carotid arteries. And if they don't have a pulse, immediately start CPR. If you don't know CPR, I highly recommend that you find a class and learn it. I know Medic here in Mecklenburg County, they offer free hands-only CPR, and it doesn't involve any of the mouth-to-mouth stuff. It's part of a whole new protocol that's being pushed. But you just start those compressions, and 911 will walk you through it if you don't know it. So you get them inside. If they still have a pulse, just leave them inside, help them cool down. If they're wearing some kind of button-up shirt, you can unbutton it for them. Just try and make them as comfortable as possible. They might be unconscious, and you won't know if they're comfortable, but just think about it if it were you. If you were really hot and you were unconscious, you'd want something to unbutton you, get you as cool as you can be. When the ambulance arrives, they're probably going to be checking the exact same things. They're going to be checking for a pulse. They're going to be checking for a body temperature. They'll probably hook up a 12 lead or some sort of AED device to measure what his heart's doing, his or her. And from there, they will probably, if they have a paramedic on board, they'll probably stick a line in, an IV in, to give him some saline, give him some fluid, since if he's unconscious, he's not going to be able to swallow. So that's just going to be the fastest way to get fluid running through his body. From there, due to North Carolina law and standards, if you give medication, which saline is considered a medication, it's an artificial substance that's put inside the body. They will transport, but normally cooling down the body, giving them that fluid, that'll normally restore them, and they may wake up in the ambulance just fine. If it's extremely severe, they may wake up in the hospital, or they may not wake up at all. But if it's just as simple, he got really hot, he collapsed, put him in the ambulance, give him the fluid, he may wake up in the ambulance on the way to the hospital. So, I mean, it's very basic stuff, and there's really not a whole lot you can do at home if you're not a paramedic on that ambulance. But the very least you can do is get them inside, get them cool into a cool area, unbutton their shirt if they have it. Just get them as comfortable as possible before the ambulance arrives. That way the cooling process has already started. They're not still outside in the heat, overheating, and you don't make anything worse. That's the worst thing you can do, just make things worse. At the very least, you can make things stay where they're at, because the paramedics will do what they can in more advanced ways to amend the situation.
And another thing, and I've heard this, I remember like my grandparents would say things like, if you get too hot and you come inside, you want to drink, ice cold water, and they say, well, don't cool off too fast, and I've heard it also the other way, if you're outside in the cold, you don't want to warm up too fast, things like that. Is that just an old wives' tale? It's not really true. I mean, is there any truth to that? I mean, if somebody comes in, let's say I'm out in the yard, and let's just say I'm by myself or something. I realize I'm fatigued. I'm getting sick. I'm nauseous. I don't feel well. I know that heat stroke's coming. I'm very hot to touch. Maybe I even took my temperature, and I was at 103, 104 degrees or something like that. Jumping in a cold shower, would that be a good idea? Ice packs under your arms. I mean, what is too much? What is cool? Is there a cooling down too fast? I mean, is that possible?
I haven't seen the specific science of it. However, I've been told that there is. You can heat up well too fast. I know that for like drowning victims. If they're submerged into cold waters, there's a phrase that we say a lot, and it's, you're not dead until you're warm and dead. Because someone that has been submerged in very cold water and has drowned, there have been stories where they have been dead 45 minutes to an hour underwater, and they've brought them back through slow warming of the body. And that's a whole deal with hypothermia and rapid heating of the body. It causes a lot of damage to the brain and the heart. Same thing happens with cooling. If you're extremely warm, your body's trying to adapt to being that warm. And when you start throwing all this cool water, this cool air on it, it's going to throw it into shock. And it's basically what it is. It's a shock to the system, and your body can't compensate for it fast enough to the point where it's beneficial. And it could actually damage the heart and the brain. And then, that's just going to complicate things further and make things difficult for the ambulance company and the doctors at the hospital to fix it. So I don't have any specific science to back any of that up other than the analogy of the hypothermia and drownings and the rapid heating and the damage that it can cause. But it can happen in the opposite way from high heat to very rapid cooling.
All right. I'll probably come with a couple more questions in a second, but I did see that Daniel popped in with us, so we'll take a second to let Daniel introduce himself. Tell us any of the great weather experiences that McDowell County had 20 years ago. I mean, yesterday or this week. We'll let him talk about that for a second. And Daniel, our subject matter this week is heat stroke. So if go over your weather and then throw a question at Matt and see what you can come up with.
Well, sorry I got on a little bit late tonight. I had some sporting events going on. It's kind of interesting that this is a topic tonight because I do have some questions and it's related to sports. But anyway, my name's Daniel Crawley. I'm from Marion, North Carolina, and things have been pretty solid here across the foothills, across McDowell County over the last week or so. We've had some warm weather, even after what we had last week with the couple days where it was pretty chilly and we had a little bit of rain. But all in all, we're kind of getting in a groove right now where it's getting pretty warm, and highs today we're in the low to mid 80s. I don't have the exact temperature because I've been gone most of the day, but low to mid 80s across McDowell County. One interesting point, Matt, and I just kicked in right when you talking about how you can go from being really hot to being cool too quick. I'm around high school sports a lot, and when you get into August and you have football season, high heat's always an issue. And I've talked to some athletic trainers that we've had here locally at McDowell High, and she has always told us that you really have to take the approach that if they stay hot too long, it's going to affect their inside. It's going to affect their organs and stuff like that. And I know what our former athletic trainer used to do, currently not here, but was here a couple of years ago, to take a big old tub, not like a little kiddie tub, but just a big old tub that you could buy at, say, a hardware store, and would fill like the bottom little bit of it full of water, but he would take 2 or 3 coolers full of ice and would have it ready in case somebody needed attention. I know that's how they approached it. If I'm not mistaken, I think they try to get the core temperature down to below 99 when a person overheats. But we're getting into that time of year where we're starting to get some hot weather, and the first couple of days you really start feeling it affects you.
Yeah, I know with my high school sports program when I played, we were playing football outside. I believe it was the 07 or the 08 summer where we had temperatures in July where we had several days that were above 100 degrees. And we were very limited into what we could wear in terms of shoulder pads, leg pads, helmets. The temperature decided what we were going to wear for the day, as well as what we had available to us out on the field. As in how many water coolers, whether we had some of those roll-around igloo coolers with ice water in it with a bunch of rags. What we would do is if we started to get hot, we would take those rags that were soaked in ice water and just rub them over our heads, our arms, rather than just being dunked into an ice bath, because that's very dangerous to the heart. But I feel like what they did with our high school program was very good in terms of the health side of it, because with the rags, you're not cooling down the entire body instantly to like 32 degrees in that water. You're slowly cooling it down from that 100, 104 degree temperatures slowly through the extremities, up in the core near your head, your chest, making sure you have plenty of water available, because that's a big key into the cooling down process. We are getting into that time of the year, and that's when athletic trainers and coaches really need to step up, understand what the weather is, what's happening, what effects it could have on the kids, and making decisions based on the weather rather than, oh, we need to practice today, we haven't learned this yet. It's, okay, are the kids going to be okay if we go out and practice things?
Well, and I don't know if you guys had already covered this before I got on here. We had a kid yesterday who was participating in the 4A regional golf tournament there in Mecklenburg County, and their tee time was like before 11 a.m., but he spent all day yesterday drinking sodas, and he didn't take care of himself beforehand. And, yeah, our coach, I remember he told me that by the time he got to the third hole yesterday, he could just look at him and see he wasn't playing well, and it kind of got his attention. And the next thing you know, man, he was like very white, very pale, and for a better sense of term, he lost his breakfast right there on the golf course. And they eventually gave him some electrolyte drinks, and he came around after a while. But even just simple stuff like sodas, if you drink that even the day before, that's going to affect you later on.
Yeah, and that goes into a lot of the physiology of the body. Yes, soda does have water in it. I was one of those people that was like, what's so wrong about soda? It's got water in it. It's mostly water. But yes, it does have water. However, it has a lot of sugars in it. And those sugars require that water to be metabolized in the body. The more sugars you're going to put into your body, the more water you're going to require to metabolize it for energy. And when you put them in the same drink and you drink them at the same time, you're just negating the whole system. You're not necessarily gaining water for your body to metabolize and keep functioning properly. You're just gaining that water to metabolize the sugar that you just ingested at the same time. That's why it's also starting to become more popular to serve Gatorade after games and matches rather than during or before, because what your body does is it metabolizes that sugar, it metabolizes those electrolytes the instant it gets it. And while it's doing that, you're going to run out of energy during the match or the game rather than gaining the energy, I guess you could say, because your body's going to be burning. It's going to use its energy to burn all those calories that you just ingested versus using energy that you gain by ingesting those calories. The calories that you gain from those drinks will be available to you post-game. And your body loses a lot of electrolytes and water and sugars through the game, but then say you drink a Gatorade or a Powerade, some energy, some sports drink after the game, that's going to replenish what you had lost instead of giving you extra of what you need during the game.
That's kind of philosophy that our trainers take here at McDowell. During the season, they drink water Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, but then on Thursday, the trainers will fix them Gatorade and have them ready for Friday night. And like you said, not just your body's working itself, not just when you're done doing physical activity. It takes a process for it to quit after you're doing physical activity. And like you said, if you drink ahead of time, then it helps replenish you for later and has you ready to go.
Yeah, that's why everyone discusses the whole drink so many glasses of water before you go to bed or the day before if you have a game the next day, because it takes that much for it to get into your system and to be equalized throughout your body. Because if you were to drink all of, say, 3 glasses of water 2 hours before the game, most of that's still going to be in your stomach during the game. If you drink it the day before, that's going to have had time to go through your stomach, through your system, reach everywhere in your system, your brain, your heart, your lungs, your muscles. It's going to have plenty of time to get there rather than just sitting still in your stomach, just adding to your weight while you're running or whatever you're doing in that event. And the same goes with food. It's when you put those carbs in your body the night before, it's had time to get everywhere, give your muscles and your brain those molecules to break down for the maximum amount of energy that's readily available to it during the game.
And man, that's going to lead me to my next question. This is probably our last question. We'll kind of start to wrap up. Unless some of you guys want to chime in on anything else. And Scotty, I don't know, have you been checking the Q&A? Have we had any questions come in this evening?
No question.
No question. Okay, so we're good there. All right, so my last question, and it's something I used to do when I knew I had a game or practice. Every day that I had a game or practice, I used to not eat for the entire day. I would always eat the night before, get a good meal in, Sometimes, if my practice was later in the evening, I might eat breakfast. But usually after, say, if I had practice at 3, 4 o'clock, I probably wouldn't eat breakfast. If I end up having a game or practice, say, later, 6, 7 o'clock, a lot of times I would eat breakfast, and that'd be it for me for the day. I just drink a lot of water and try to keep myself hydrated and things like that. So let's plan that out. Whether it be sporting event or maybe you've got a 4-acre yard you have to mow tomorrow, what would be a good way to get your body ready for that the next day? And this might probably goes a little beyond your EMT training, more into a nutritionalist, but I'm sure you kind of have an idea for how this would work. But what's something that you can do to kind of prepare yourself going into, tomorrow's your day, tomorrow's your major workout day. What can I do today and tonight to prepare my body for that activity tomorrow?
No, it's a good thing I took AP Biology in high school and a little bit of nutritional section in there. I guess if we're looking at a Sunday evening and you're planning on working out or doing some activity on Monday, Sunday evening you're going to want to have protein. You're going to want to have carbohydrates, pasta, chicken, beef, steak. I mean, that's all well and good. However, you get into the whole red meat versus white meat, and that's a whole different discussion. But,
chicken and rice and peanut butter sandwiches, we got it.
Yeah, chicken, rice, peanut butter sandwiches, spaghetti, some kind of pasta. Those are very beneficial food sources for your body. They contain carbs. They contain proteins. They contain starches. They contain a little bit of sugars. They contain a bunch of calories. That's all very beneficial for your body on the next day. On the next day, say it's Monday now, you're going to want to have a decent breakfast, eggs, bacon, sausage, a good hearty breakfast, not just your typical bowl of cereal, because those, as much as they try to say that they're nutritional for you, they're really not. A good hearty homemade breakfast, and throughout the day, now Joey, I know you said that you didn't eat very much normally on the days that you had an event. You do want to eat a little something. Don't eat something like you ate the night before. Don't eat the heavy stuff, the pastas, the chickens, the peanut butter sandwiches. Eat something lighter, something simple as like granola bars or small sandwiches. Nothing
Fruit.
Heavy on the stuff. Fruit, very good. Drink a lot of water. But nothing that, like I've said, is going to be really heavy or really dense on the stomach, because that's just going to weigh you down, and that kind of food takes longer to process, and that's why you ate it the night before. You want something that's very simple. You don't want a lot of pre-processed foods either, because those take away a lot of the nutritional value, and that's why, you have the fruits and the vegetables throughout the day of your event or your workout.
And I'll tell you that my theory behind not eating during the day wasn't so much a nutritional one. I have a cast iron stomach, except for when I do things like that. If I eat within a few hours of doing something like that, it never fails. I get sick. It always was. I just learned just to not eat through the day. Yeah, and sometimes now if I did get hungry, I'd sneak a banana or something like that. Something really, really simple that I knew would not be sitting on my stomach when it come time to play. But I'll give you a funny story, and we'll kind of go into our wrap-up. But back in high school, there was a kid, Ricky, if you're watching, I'm talking about you. He was probably 6'4", 350, just a big monster lineman. And every day we had a barbecue joint like a block and a half from school. Every day this kid would walk from the school when we got out at 3 o'clock to the barbecue joint, get a pound of barbecue, eat the entire pound of barbecue between 3 o'clock and 4 o'clock practice. I don't know how the man did it. But that's his thing. So, yeah, I would have died. And I always wondered, I don't know what his 40-yard dash time was, but I got a feeling he'd leave that pound of barbecue out. It probably would have came down a little bit. But anyway, Scotty, you want to kind of take us into a little bit of a wrap-up? I do have a rant this evening, something I'll go over. And I'll kind of jump into it a little bit. Like I said, wrap this up a little bit early. Let me jump into that because you guys might want to weigh in on this little rant. It was the same rant that I wanted to do 2 weeks ago when we had Brad Panovich on the show with us because it kind of affects points a little bit towards some of our meteorologists. But I'll let you kind of wrap us up, and then I'll go over that, and we'll wind down the show with that.
All right. Well, we have about 15 minutes left, so I feel like we would really neglect our viewers if we didn't kind of talk about the botched severe weather event last week. So maybe we can spend about 5 or 10 minutes on that and then kind of wrap up because let's all face it, we followed the models and what the models said, and it all bit us in the butt. So kind of open it up as a discussion for everyone because none of us saw anything. So what happened, what was the cause of it, and what can we learn from it? And I hope this isn't about your rant either, Joey.
No, you're good. Okay. Well, it could tie a little bit into it, but yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I just kind of open it up to you guys. This time last week, we were supposed to be in the midst of one of the biggest severe weather outbreaks that we've seen in quite a while here in North Carolina. And not to take anything away from the eastern part of the state where they had several tornadoes touch down. But if you draw a line from, Raleigh westward, we really didn't have much in those areas.
I'd say 74 west.
Yeah, let's kind of talk about
west.
Let's kind of talk about what happened, what went wrong, and what we can learn from that. Joey, you want to start us off?
I can kind of do that. Well, we always look at the models, and another thing that I always tell people, I'm big on weather history. I'm big on, like our past winter storms this winter, and Scotty, I know you're with me on this one. We actually were able to predict one of our snow events that nobody else actually picked up on, for the simple fact that we remembered back to previous storms that had that same look, that same positioning, those same dynamics to them, and that set off light bulbs to us to say, you know what, this one could do the same thing. So when this storm was coming, typically here in the Carolinas, for us to see a big outbreak, usually, we have a case of an outbreak in the plains or the deep south that lasts for a few days. If you have one of those outbreaks where you have tornadoes in Oklahoma today, you have tornadoes in Tennessee tomorrow, the next day, and then the third day it's over the Carolinas, and usually those storm systems, they don't do a lot here. They're quick movers. They get linear. They don't produce large supercells. That doesn't happen. This last storm system had all the looks of a storm that would produce in our area. It was a slow mover. It had lots of upper air energy. Had everything going for it. And the models were picking up on that. It had everything going for it. It was like this could be an event that would drop a lot of severe weather in our area. Again, we were a little bit lucky on timing wise on a couple of them. So that my thought was we might dodge some of the severe weather just for the fact of a lot of the major fuel, the things that we needed were going to come together, in the overnight hours where we'd have a little bit less instability. So my thought there was, okay, well, maybe we'll miss some of that. With it being such a slow-moving storm, it wasn't going to be just a one-time chance. We knew we was going to have a chance today and then possibly another chance the next day and then possibly another chance the next day. So that's why I was on board even with the thought of it. Some of the best chance would come overnight, and that would restrict it. I was still willing to say I thought we was going to have some severe weather in our area, and we ended up completely blowing that. And what really, really hampered most of our severe weather was the large thunderstorms that formed over the Florida Panhandle. I think Pensacola ended up with some 25, 26 inches of rain, like a 24-hour period, and that just completely robbed any moisture, any of those things that the models were telling us were going to happen here. It kept them from getting here, and with that choked off our severe weather. And I know Daniel, he usually is pretty keen on watching these kind of events and really get in depth with what happened. So I'll let him kind of talk. That's just kind of my thoughts on it. Like I said, I always look at the history of weather, and the history was showing that this was a good opportunity. So I was willing to go with it. Daniel, I know what were your thoughts on the system?
Well, Joey, you made a great point about the moisture over the Gulf Coast region that really robbed the transport of moisture further north, say into areas like Georgia, South Carolina. And for western North Carolina, and when I say western North Carolina, I'll say west of Highway 321, it was kind of a situation to where we had a wedge, or kind of a hybrid wedge across the region. And what we were needing in western North Carolina for the severe storms to occur was for the storms to actually initiate over places of Georgia, South Carolina, that was in the warm sector. And what would happen is, and I believe Scotty would agree with me on this, we were kind of watching the wedge to see where exactly it would end up shifting north or south. And then generally, say 50 miles north of that point, you have to look for storms to get into that wedge area to where you start getting a little enhanced rotation. So the wedge was a big factor for the western part of North Carolina. And, I'll be honest, in hindsight, I'm always kind of looking at things a little bit differently. On Monday afternoon, last Monday, it was sunny and it was fairly warm, but there was a lot of lower humidity, especially across North Carolina, and lower dew points as compared to farther south. And I think what happened is when the initial batch of precip formed over Alabama, North Georgia, and it slid into the southern Appalachian region overnight Monday night into Tuesday, which I picked up about 1.25 inches or so of rain out of that. That really set the wedge in place, because the computer models that we were looking at and some of the predictions kept having the wedge moving north quickly. And, North Carolina, and you talk about history and climatology, that's most of the time does not occur. And I think what happened, since we had a lot of convection that fired over McDowell County and over toward Asheville and over to the west, back in the far western mountains, it really set the wedge in place. And when it got down to really in South Carolina as far down as I-85 around Greer, that really was kind of a sign that things were not going to pan out exactly as we thought it would. And I also think some of the upper level energy, I just wondered if it was completely modeled correctly as well, especially across the central part of the country, because it just seemed like after a while, even Alabama and Mississippi, they were kind of expected to get another round on Tuesday, and they didn't get anything even compared to what they were going to get.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think, you're talking about that wedge boundary. I think a lot of that, I guess it was Tuesday when those big storms were over Pensacola in that area. I think that the fact that they were robbing so much moisture actually helped that wedge boundary from eroding. I mean, I think if we would have had a clean, free-flowing freight train of moisture coming north from the Gulf of Mexico, it would have pushed that boundary back. And since those storms were really robbing everything, it just never let that boundary erode. And like you were saying, we had to get that warm sector for the storms to form and then move into our area over the boundary. That's where we expect to have our best chance of rotating thunderstorms. And then, of course, we didn't get into form because it was being robbed. And then, of course, the boundary never left and never evaded north because, again, the moisture surge wasn't coming. It wasn't pushing it up. So.
And one more thing I want to state about the whole situation, and I noticed it on Tuesday because when it started looking like Western North Carolina wasn't going to get a whole lot, we really focused on what was going on down east. And I really noticed late morning Tuesday, there was a surge of dew points across the PD region of South Carolina and eastern North Carolina. And if you could look at the satellite images late morning Tuesday, you could see where eastern North Carolina was receiving a flow from the south that was not interrupted. It was coming straight off the Atlantic, almost kind of a sea breeze fashion. And then what happened is that clashed with the actual frontal boundary that was sitting across North Carolina, and then that allowed storms to fire up, and then when the storms fired up and they grew tall enough, it was able to kick into the upper level energy that allowed the tornadoes to form. Because, and Scotty would agree with me, and Chris White, who's not on with us tonight, when those storms started firing over East North Carolina, it didn't take long, and they were looking pretty obvious that something was going to happen.
Yeah, I noticed the same thing you're talking about, Daniel. I actually saw that and thought, wow, it's like there's a sea breeze front coming in down there. I mean, it was almost as obvious of a sea breeze front as any other day, any other hot summer day when those things kind of occur. So it was. I saw that also, and like you said, it didn't take long. Once those things fired, you could definitely tell that our ingredients were there, and we needed a spark. Because when they got the spark there, they exploded. The thing was, we just never had our spark on this side of the state.
Yeah, it was just like all the ingredients were there to bake a cake, but we just didn't put them all in at the same time. And
we just didn't turn the oven on. That's what happened. That's really what it was. Everything was there, but we never turned the oven on.
And it's like that I call it, and I don't know if it's a technical term or whatever, but in Burke Weather Center we call it the Carolina Rob Job, where a lot of the moisture gets interrupted and stays around the Gulf Coast. And most of the time we see that in the wintertime, and that's why we may see lesser snow amounts in the western part of the state than we do out east. And it seems like that happened again with this storm. And it's kind of just like a big brick wall that was just blocking the moisture transportation up and eroding that cold air wedge. So
I'm gonna check my weather glossary for Carolina Rob Job.
Yeah, if not, add it to the glossary.
I'll get it in there.
Ricky.
Go ahead.
If you were done, I was going to move into what I was going to say about the whole thing.
Yeah, go ahead.
Well, Ricky and I and a few other of our, about 7 or 8 of us, we went storm chasing last week in eastern North Carolina. We went on Tuesday. And so to be completely honest, we didn't pay a whole lot of attention to the weather here in the Charlotte area as much as we probably should have until after the fact. Over there, the atmosphere was prime. It was rich. You could tell right where the warm front was as we moved through Union County on Tuesday. It was very evident that there was going to be storms, and that's thankfully what we got because that's what we went for. But here in Charlotte, we had 2 days where the wedge protected us. Monday, the wedge protected us completely, just like most everybody else in the western part of the state. But then on Tuesday, it protected us for the first half of the day, but then in the second half of the day, it started to shift closer to the I-85 corridor. And that's where we expected to see some storm initiation moving into Wednesday. However, like everyone's been saying, down in the panhandle of Florida and Alabama, all that moisture robbed us of anything that we could have gotten here. But we did, Ricky and I, we were up till about 3 a.m. or so Tuesday night, probably similar to how Joey is most nights. And we were kind of watching the thing unfold, but we were also watching some storms develop in the Greensboro and Triangle area, which we found was very interesting, and we looked at the path that the moisture was making, and it was shutting Charlotte off and points west. There was no moisture there, but the warm front had started to shift and opened up a little bit more instability towards the Greensboro and Raleigh area, so that on Wednesday they had the potential for that severe weather. Moving into Wednesday, the potential was there. The warm front shifted just enough to where Charlotte was kind of riding the boundary. However, like Scotty and Joey, we just didn't have the oven turned on. We had every ingredient there to make the cake, but the oven wasn't turned on, or the cake didn't make it in the oven. However, Greensboro and points east, they all had it there, and we actually had a couple of guys that we were chasing with on Tuesday. They were planning on chasing on Wednesday on the I-85 corridor, but once we started losing those lapse rates and losing the K index and losing that initiation, by about 11 a.m., they said, we're not doing it. We're done. It's not happening. And the SPC caught on really quick as to what was happening, and they shifted all of their products further east and dropped the probabilities down a lot.
Yeah, it was so bad that Reed Timmer had to go back home. So.
Yeah. Did you get Reed? Welcome to Carolina Chasing.
Yeah, he probably won't come back.
Probably.
Yeah, I hope you learn like the rest of us and knows that you chase on C-Tex days, not on moderate risk days. Okay, that's how it works around here.
Yeah, so that was the biggest flop. That's why all of us are continuing to learn as much as we can about the weather because, we rely heavily on models, and model data will sometimes mislead you and misguide you, and ultimately, it just didn't pick up on all the scenarios that took place. So that's why weather is never an exact science. It's always changing, and that's why we're always trying to learn more about it. So with that, we'll kind of wrap it up with that. I'll send it to Matt, and then we'll work our way to the west, and then we'll let Joey wrap up everything with his weekly rant. So go ahead, Matt.
Yeah, this is different. I like going east to west this time. Well, here in Charlotte, it's been gorgeous. I know most everybody's leaving for the summer, and if you decide to stay in Charlotte, our weather account will still be up for watches and warnings and any advisories posted by the National Weather Service. So don't think we're abandoning you. Plus, I'll still be here in the Charlotte area. I'll still be posting updates on my Twitter feed. But for the immediate forecast for the next several days, again, gorgeous weather. Tomorrow we'll probably hit 90. We may break 90 for the first time this year. Moving into the weekend, we'll see chances for rain increase as we go into the weekend. Saturday, Sunday. Sunday will probably be our best chance. As it looks right now, not a huge chance, but a chance for a few scattered showers and thunderstorms in the area. Maybe a cool-off next week. I say cool-off in the terms of a mild spring cool-off into the low to mid-70s. So it'll feel great. I highly recommend getting outside, some vitamin D. It doesn't hurt, I promise. Let's just stay up too long without sunscreen. But,
Or you get heat stroke.
Or you get heat stroke. Just remember, drink your water. If you get too warm, get in the shade, get inside for a little bit. But don't be too afraid to go outside. And if you want to follow me on Twitter, I'm at WXToad. Our UNCC weather account is at UNCC Weather. We're also on Facebook. Feel free to give us a follow and a like if you want. I'm not a big fan for asking for likes, but do what you got to do. Free advertising, right?
There you go. All right.
Bump it over to.
I guess I'm next, right? Yeah.
We're
saving you for last, Joey.
Right. Skip me.
Yeah, skip.
All right, so just like what Matt talked about, we're looking at another hot day tomorrow, and I started off as we're saying we're in technically a heat wave, but the sensor out at Morganton-Lenoir Airport's always been known to run a little bit warmer than what it should, but the temperature has been in at least the upper 80s around here, even though the thermometer at Morganton-Lenoir Airport has reported 90 degrees or higher the past 3 days. So I expect more of that tomorrow. Friday and Saturday and Sunday we start to introduce some shower chances and thunderstorms. Friday looks to be about 20%, and then this weekend we start to see a better chance of some of those afternoon thunderstorms that we get in the summertime, late spring and summertime. And that looks to last into next week with our temperatures still warm and mild. So it seems like the cold air is finally gone for the season, and I, for one, am very glad of that. I enjoy the hot weather and stuff like that. So you can follow us at .org that's our website. Follow us on Facebook, Brick Weather Inc., McDowell Weather, Caldwell Weather. I'll let Joey plug his page. And then with the sad news, not sad for her, but sad for us, Amber McGinnis is no longer with Brick Weather Incorporated and no longer on the panel, as she has been hired on at AccuWeather as the storm warning meteorologist for Wichita, Kansas. So she'll be moving out in the next week or so. So by default, Brick Weather Inc. grows to 3 more counties as we start to pick up Cleveland, Lincoln, and Gaston counties. So before we know it, we're going to have everything between Asheville and Charlotte, and that's the way we like it, right, Joey?
That's right. Yeah, Cleveland, Lincoln, and Gaston today. Tomorrow, the world. That's right. That's our goal. But on the Amber news, I plan on talking to her. I haven't had a chance yet. I'm letting her get finished up with all of her moving. But I think there's no doubt that her first interview as an AccuWeather forecaster should be on our show, right? I mean, that's right. That's the way I can see it happening. So I think.
And I'll go ahead and tell you, since you haven't talked to her, we talked to her, and next April, May, we have a date out there as we're going to go storm chasing.
All right.
So she has already set that up for us. So we are going to be out there chasing some tornadoes. So I'm excited about that.
I'm ready to take my talents to the plains, just like LeBron took his to South Beach. I'm taking them to the plains.
This is his last year in South Beach, by the way. Just throwing that out there. All right, Daniel.
Well, I doubt he's going to the plains. Though a trip to Oklahoma City for him would be interesting. Okay. But anyway, go ahead, Daniel.
All right.
Well, weather-wise, I'm pretty similar to what's going on in Catawba County. Continue to get some nice warm temperatures, mid to upper 80s, even some mid 80s in the Asheville area, and 80s across the rest of the mountains. Heading into this weekend, chances of rain look to increase a little bit. Might get a little convective activity to initiate across the mountains, especially Saturday and Sunday. And we're kind of working our way into a late spring, early summer pattern. And I'm, for one, excited to see it, because going all the way back to October, we've had bouts of cold and bouts of some warm, and then a whole lot of cold in the wintertime, and I'm ready for it to be over. And like Scotty said, I think we've kind of flipped that switch finally. What's been a pattern that seemed like it lasted about 6 months, I think we're getting out of it. We're heading towards summer. But before I get off here, if anybody has any questions, anything about weather, feel free to contact me at marionncwx@gmail.com. Of course, just got my regular page on Facebook, and anytime we got some severe weather coverage going on, I'll be helping Scotty and Joe and them with the McDowell weather page along with the other pages. And one more thing I'd like to plug, and I don't know if you guys can see it on the screen share. We're having our annual Relay for Life event in Marion Friday night, and this is a article on the McDowell News website about it. This is a big thing for McDowell County. Of course, I know all the communities around here usually do that, but we're having our event starting this Friday night at 6 o'clock at the Tom Johnson Camping Center Rally Park just west of Marion. This is always a big event. We have a lot of support locally, and right now it's looking like the weather will cooperate for that. Of course, I've had a lot of people ask me about it, and so my reputation's on the line when it goes to Friday night. But anybody local that's watching and can make it out to Tom Johnson's Friday night, come on out and support a good cause.
Oh, did Joey freeze?
No, I didn't freeze.
Okay.
I had to fight off my cat like you are. My cat is trying to get on me, too.
This is the weather cat right here. This is Gracie.
Sassy keeps trying to crawl down here in front of me, so that's why I keep up here fighting her off. So
I tried to fight her off as long as I could, and she obviously won.
I'm not really sure what I got into with multiple people having cats.
Yeah, that's man card revoked. Anyway,
I have a dog too, so.
I have a dog too. She's slightly bigger than a rat.
Little pom pom, Scotty.
That's not funny, Mac. That's what I have.
Hey, that's what I got too. He's about this big.
Mine is part Pomeranian, part Chihuahua. So.
Oh, mine's Maltese with a short haircut named Bogey.
Oh, wow. Anyway, all right. First off, another bit of business. We do have our spotter class this Saturday. Maiden Rescue Squad. That's on St. James Church Road in Maiden/Newtonish area there.
You gonna right?
Say what?
You're gonna give me directions how to get there, right?
Yes, I'll help you out. It's really not as hard as it sounds.
Right.
It's actually right off of Business 321. But anyway, and right outside of the town of Maiden. But yeah, we'll get you there. Quick thing, 10 to 2, the usual deal. We have the basic class in the morning. Then we have lunch, which will be provided, hamburgers, hot dogs, barbecue. In fact, let me just run through a couple of sponsors just so I get their name out there to make sure they get a little bit of credit since they donated everything. They're paying for everybody's meal. We're not footing the bill hardly at all, just for some minor things. We've got our drinks were provided by Action Limo and Transportation in Newton. I've got buns.
We can escort. I really think we should.
We probably should. I should have told him drinks and an escort for his donation. He says actually he was planning on being there for the class. Eric Yoder, who runs Action Limo there, was planning on being there for the class, but he's also an EMT, Matt. But yeah, he's actually going to be driving some people to Harris Casino on Saturday, so he's not even going to be able to be there. So people are taking a limo ride up there. But anyway, those guys provided the drinks. We got hamburgers from Carrie's Creative Creations. We've got buns from CrossFit, Newton Conover CrossFit. I've got hot dogs were provided by the Hickory Speedway Women's Club. We got more buns coming from the XD Elite Cheerleaders. I should be in NASCAR. I'm naming off all my sponsors. The Fraternal Order of the Police, we had a donation in honor of those guys of some cash. Rosa Torres with It Works, she donated the cheese for our event. My wife is donating baked beans for the event because she's a starving artist and that's all we can afford. I can't think. I'm sure I'm forgetting somebody in this whole group, but the actual event is sponsored by the Blue Ridge Weather Watch and Burke Catawba County Weather Incorporated. We're co-sponsoring the event. Alan Akoff with Blue Ridge Weather Watch, who we will sit down and have a long discussion with about somehow joining in with our Burke Weather team. That group really wants to get involved with us and find a way to use their ham operating services in cooperation with what we already do here. So we're going to do that, and you can't leave out Maiden Rescue Squad since they are providing the building. In fact, they even had an important meeting scheduled for the building the same day, and they moved themselves out to give us the building to use. So can't argue with that. Scotty has kittens flying all over him over there, we say. But anyway, I think I got everybody covered on that. It's an open class. Everybody's invited. 10 to 2. Shoot us an email. Give us a call. We'll get you on the list. I spoke with Alan as of yesterday. It might have been the day before. I think he said he had about 50 people that had RSVP to the event. He had called him, confirmed, put him on the list. He's going to be there. Tan the buns nicely. Thank you, Daniel, for putting that in our chat. Yes. But anyway, I called you out there. But anyway, and again, I'm sure I'm missing somebody in all that because I usually do, and I'm not Jimmy Johnson or Dale Jr. and I can't name them all off like I should. But anyway, on to my rant. I'm going to make it quick because we have definitely gone over 15 minutes of our time already. And I'll tell you where this happened with the severe weather last week. This kind of came up that in conjunction with the fact that I rewatched an episode of our competitors in the webcast world, Weather Brains. I went back and watched episode 404 the other week. If anybody ever watches that show, they know exactly what I'm talking about.
The best
Scotty, yeah, it was definitely their best episode. And I don't want to throw a certain person under the bus, but I mean, it's an 800-pound gorilla, and I got to say it.
I don't think he can hear us.
Yeah, he probably doesn't want to hear us. No. But anyway, and even if we did, I honestly think we're probably too low on the totem pole for him to care. But anyway, that's a whole other subject. But Mike Morgan out there, he mentioned during his severe weather, his coverage, that everybody should just drive south and get out of the way of the tornado. And it caused a big stink because there was a major pile up of cars, and a lot of people could have got hurt from it. And my rant is not about whether he was right or wrong. My rant is about not only him, but many other meteorologists, those with Facebook pages, some in the, a little bit bigger in the meteorologists, who just don't, and us too, and this kind of goes right along with what, this week with us blowing the forecast. We make mistakes, and it happens. The difference is when do you stand up and admit that it was a mistake, you admit you did something wrong, and you accept that, or do you just defend yourself in the way, and I hate to keep pointing to him, but the way Mike did when he went on that show. He literally went on there with a loaded gun to fire back at anybody who even bothered to try to question what he did, and he's not the only one that's done it, so I'm not just pointing at him. There's lots of other meteorologists out there and weather guys and Facebook pages who have got things wrong. They just plain won't admit it. I know that every one of us on this panel, I saw it on our pages when we blew that forecast. We jumped right in and we said it. We made a mistake. We messed up. Like I said, I wish Brad was on here with us this week, because he also, right on TV, said, we blew this one, and said why, said what went wrong, looked back at it, figured out where we made the mistake, and tried to learn from that. With Mike's mistake, it could have been a big deal. He could have got people killed, and he actually, and almost watching that show, if anybody ever goes back and watches Weather Brains 404, I suggested, I hate to brag about our competitor and hate to go watch them, but if you watch that show, you will see something he did that I thought was pretty low. He actually he looked at James Spann, virtually across their little electronic mahogany table, as they like to call it. But he looked over there and he said, without saying the exact words, he said, "Did you not get somebody killed on April 27th?" And it's true. The guy even wrote a book about how James Spann made a mistake in his severe weather coverage, and it actually got his girlfriend killed. And since I've started Catawba County Weather, and Scotty, I don't know how you guys, I guess you guys started yours before the Burke tornado, so I know there were some injuries, some things there, but in Catawba County, since we started the page, we've had no serious injuries and no deaths. And now I'm not naive enough to think that stat's going to last forever, because it's not, and I know it's not. But that's a stat that I take pride in. That's a stat that I hope we can keep going. I hope that we can warn people, and we hope we don't ever make a mistake. God forbid it ends up being our fault that something happens. But just without it even being a mistake in a forecast, I know how heavy that would affect me, how much that would bother me because of what I do and how much passion I have for this. I know how that would affect how I feel. And then I saw him actually tell James Spann, it's your fault that person died. And this book even wrote, the guy wrote a book about how it was literally James's fault that the person died. And James took it like a champ. He admitted it. He said, yes, it was. I made a mistake. Our radar was a little bit off. I caught it one place, and the tornado wasn't in that place. It was in another place. And he stood up and admitted that. The fact that he could stand there and and admit that someone lost their life because of something he did, and there are so many of you meteorologists out there, I'm looking straight at you on this one, there are so many of you out there that won't even admit when you blow a snow forecast. Come on. Man up on something and just accept it. It's not an exact science, so people know that. Just say, you know what, I made a mistake. And to be honest with you, I'll leave you alone. I will personally leave you alone if you admit to your mistake. But if you stand there and defend yourself and try to act like you didn't really make a mistake, that you said it was going to snow next week, but then you didn't really say it was going to snow. You said it might, and that's not saying it was going to, so I wasn't exactly wrong because I only said it might snow. I'm probably going to call you out on that, okay? Because that's not being a man. That's not just accepting the fact that you made a mistake. That's my rant for this week. That's where I'll end it. Just accept it. I'll get off your back for it. If a man can accept the fact that he accidentally made a call and it caught somebody killed, he can admit that and accept it, then I can't see why you can't just stand up and admit when you blow a snow forecast or you caught it to be sunny today and it ended up being cloudy. Just admit when you're wrong. We'll all get along a lot better. And that's pretty much it. Scotty, why don't you kind of wrap us up and we'll take this thing home.
Well, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I just want to chime in for a second. I don't want to add too much longer to Joey's rant or anything, but It's very true. It takes a real man or a real woman to stand up, swallow their pride, and admit, hey, I was wrong. Even if on the smallest stuff, it doesn't have to be something big, like someone lost their life because you botched a weather forecast. Um, but it's just a small snowfall forecast, or we didn't get rain today here where I thought we were going to get it. It really takes a strong character to swallow that pride and say, hey, we messed up. And I don't mean to toot on my or Ricky's horn with our weather account, but Wednesday morning we woke up and we looked at how the weather was developing, looked at the models and everything, and we just looked at each other. We said, we messed up. Like, we blew it. There was no doubting it. We knew it, and as soon as we looked at each other, and we admitted to everybody on our Twitter page and everything. And I know that there are pages out there on Facebook and on Twitter that will go back and delete tweets, delete posts, or revise them somehow just to make it look like they really didn't mess up. And that's just, I mean, that's kind of being deceitful, and that's just covering up what you really said in order to make yourself look better. And in reality, at the time, you may have been wrong. You may have been wrong and cost somebody's life, but you go back and change that. Does that change that you were wrong and cost somebody their life? It may not be that extreme, but what if it was? I mean, it doesn't change the fact that you were wrong. It just changes the fact that you look like you were wrong. And there's no pride in that whatsoever. And I'll get off my little soapbox about it, but I mean, I know all of us here, we will stand up and be the first ones to tell you we were wrong. We don't have any problem with that because we know we're human. We know we mess up. We know it's not going to be perfect every time. As much as it looked like it could be great from here on out, as much as we learn with every step along the way, we know we're going to mess up. It's just part of life. And I mean, we'll be the first ones to tell you. So I just want everyone out there to feel like we're not going to be those that will say something wrong but then deny it later on. We'll be the first ones to tell you that we were wrong, apologize, learn from it, and do better the next time.
Yeah, I always tell people there's nothing wrong with making a mistake as long as you don't make it twice. So as long as you learn from it and you do something better the next one, we'll be all right. So, Scotty, I guess I'm done. If anybody has anything to add to it, go ahead and we'll go to the house.
Daniel, you got anything to add?
Nah, I'll let it be where it is. I not had a chance to actually see the video that Joey's talking about.
Oh, go back and watch it. Yes, it's well worth your hour and a half time. I promise you that.
It is. Yeah. It's a good show. All right, well, guys, to our fans who's watching, send us some messages, some comments. Let us know what you want to talk about on our show because this is not our show. We're just the talking heads to it. So send us some messages, comments on what you'd like the show to be about, and we can definitely do that as we try to line up some guests and stuff throughout the summer months. We're still going to be doing this throughout the summer, but with different schedules and conflicts and stuff like that. Some weeks will be more populated than others. So just bear with us and give us your suggestions. I'm not going to do Steve's line because that's Steve's line. I'm just going to everyone has a great night, and we'll see you next Wednesday.
5 seconds.